Hello, my name is Hunter, the movie reviewing pony, because when it comes to cinema, humans cannot be trusted. And welcome to the next iteration of the aptly named Good or Bad, the review where I take the latest movies to hit the box office and critique them. Space! What the hell was that? Sorry, Greg, got excited. Space exploration has long been a fascinating topic with me. Not just in the human universe, but in my universe as well, but we don't really have that good of a space program. Regardless, I'd totally go to space if the opportunity arose. Not to mention I've played my fair share of Kerbal Space Program. Seriously, I am all over this kinds of stuff. So naturally, when a movie like this comes along, I immediately run out to the movie theater to see it. So, Interstellar. Good or bad? First time I heard about this movie was during the previews for Guardians of the Galaxy, so not too long ago. And looking at the poster, right off the bat, we have some problems. Allow me to direct your attention to the bottom, from the director of the Dark Knight trilogy and Inception. Yeah, that's great, he directed The Dark Knight. Guess what? He also directed Dark Knight Rises, and we all know that was a disaster. And admittedly, I never saw Inception, but apparently the only reason it got a ridiculous amount of praise was because it was being compared to a whole bunch of other movies that were bad at the time. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's not as good as everyone says it is. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't trust the director of this film. Not to mention he also wrote the story for Man of Steel. Yeah, this guy has had a few blunders. Another thing is, there really wasn't that much hype building up to this movie's release. Though that might just be me. I didn't see anyone particularly excited for this movie, that's for sure. But you're probably saying to yourself, just say whether or not it's good or not, Hunter. Well, I can't really say that in the form of a yes or no question. Now don't get me wrong, this film is great, but it's not really for everyone. Allow me to go into a bit of detail. Let's start with what's good about this movie. Well, I gotta praise this movie for making sense at least. Remember the core? A lot of the science didn't make the least bit of sense. And visual-wise, this movie gets high praise across the board. I'm not just talking about space, no. Earth is actually done quite well. On that note, the camera work in this movie is also utterly fantastic. The camera crew spared no expense on this one. These sets look pretty good too. They definitely give off the old, run-down feeling that they were going for on Earth. The same can be said for the rest of the film. The ship interiors really look like something that humanity would be able to put together in the not-too-distant future. No, I'm not talking about Mystery Science Theater 3000. Visual-wise, this movie is great. It captures the feeling of space perfectly, and they actually went out of their way to make sure that everything looked right. In fact, if you search up on YouTube, there's a whole video on how they researched into what wormholes and black holes actually look like. It shows that they're trying, and it'd be pretty stupid to not put a lot of effort into making space look good. Visual-wise, this movie is fantastic. I also have to praise the acting in this movie. It is utterly amazing, the emotion that they put into this film. Everyone but one or two actors deserves praise in this movie. Like, Matthew McConaughey puts up an absolutely tear-jerking performance, which is good because some of these scenes require that. Now that isn't to say that Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain aren't worthy of praise either, because they are. They both put up good performances. In fact, most of the cast puts up a great performance in this film. This in turn leads to some likable characters. For example, the robots. I really enjoyed the robots in this movie. Now, it doesn't take a mechanical genius to figure out that this is the most inefficiently designed robot in history, but it was clearly paying homage to the monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey, so I'll let that slide. So, just to clarify, do I like this movie? Yes. Is it a great movie? No. There's plenty of things wrong with this movie. Remember when I said that all of the acting in this movie was worth praise except for one or two people? Well, the kid who played the daughter, Mackenzie Foy, is one of those people. Now don't get me wrong, she's a good actor, but it doesn't really compare to the rest of the actors in this movie. It doesn't hold up. I can sort of expect this from a child actor. They don't have nearly as much practice as adults, but still, other than that, the acting is fantastic. Even the robots had a fair bit of personality behind them. But probably one of the biggest problems I have with this movie is the science behind it. Now don't get me wrong, this stuff does make sense, but it is way too freaking complicated. Now, some of it is explained, like how wormholes work or stuff like that, but other than that, not a lot of it is explained. Or at least not as much as I'd like there to be explained. I'm a pretty smart pony, and even I was lost at a few points. They're talking about beings that exist in 5 dimensions. I can barely handle 2 dimensions. I mean, look at me. If you guys are still as lost as I am after seeing the movie, I put a video in the description for Dean News that explains the science behind it. And once again, the backstory is hardly explained at all. Did a war happen? Was there a climate change? I don't know. They sort of piece it together, but the basic message is that they're saying is that life is hell on Earth right now. And another huge complaint that I have with this movie. The audio mixing was a huge issue for me. There are times in this movie where you can't hear what they're saying, and they're trying to say something interesting. But then it's either the music or the sound that's overpowering their voices. This was also an issue in Dark Knight Rises, which, as I stated, was directed by the person who directed this. The film also got pretty sappy at points. Like, they're talking about love being a force that transcends all dimensions. I don't know, that just seems pretty freaking sappy to me. And one of the main characters, I'm not gonna say which, jumps to an unnatural conclusion to resolve the whole issue going on in the movie. Like, seriously, I think the writing team got a little bit lazy on that one. Couldn't think of a way to resolve the thing, could you? Now, I can't go into too much detail without spoiling anything, but I can't really look past these issues. Certain things aren't explained, the ending is confusing, but overall it does lead up to a satisfying conclusion. There's actually potential here for a sequel, or I've heard they're talking about a prequel, which makes sense, because there is potential there. But how does this particular movie hold up? Well, I can't really be gentle with something like this. I mean, it was a great movie, but it wasn't as good as I hoped it would be. I'm gonna have to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. This movie left me a little bit disappointed, honestly. I expected a little more, but it just didn't happen. Not to mention, it's got a bunch of flaws that weigh it down. I'm not saying you shouldn't go see this movie. I'm saying that it isn't for everyone. You might be a little bit lost after seeing this movie because some of the science isn't explained. You may be turned away from it because this movie is like close to 3 hours long. But if you can look past all of the flaws, there actually is a pretty enjoyable movie here. Again, this movie isn't for everyone, but if you feel like it, I do recommend you check this movie out. It certainly doesn't hold up to this year's movie lineup, but it does hold up. My name is Hunter, and this has been a Hunter Review.